Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so once more, was very important. I thank you so much for Professor Irma for giving us a speech today. So please be welcome, Professor. We're very look forward to your words, our knowledge, to open our knowledge today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luciana, for the introduction. Also the technical help. We use more or less Microsoft Teams. I'm a bit less experienced with Zoom, but hopefully everything will go fine. And most of all, thank you very much for inviting me to SPM. So the university, it's a really great pleasure. Actually, I've never given guest lectures in Brazil, so it's my first thing. So I'm really glad to meet you so that way, kind of virtually, and I really welcome all the professors and the students. I really hope that I can share with you some useful information about data analytics regarding customer relationships. And as Luciana mentioned, that we met at the EMAC conference when we had a great conversation, and then and then somewhere in the summer we started to talk about this guest lecture. Probably just a few things about my backgrounds and maybe the university. The university is in Hungary, in Central Eastern Europe, so next to Vienna and Romania, so somewhere in the middle of Europe. And our university is a quite established university in the region. We are involved in lots of internationalization, and I also put all of our certificates there, but probably it has more than just the name Corvinus University of Budapest. And personally, I'm working at the university since 1996. So I started here as a junior researcher, so it's almost 26 years now. So it's even sometimes it's shocking. So number of years for me as well. And I was always involved in quantitative research. First as a researcher, and later on I started to teach this at the university. And after the Bologna process, when we actually divided our programs into bachelor and master programs, I started to develop courses where I can make use of this kind of quantitative knowledge. And we also do a lot of research. Not only, I teach customer relationship management and retail related courses, and also some courses in the PhD program. And we do research mostly in retail innovation. So, everyone is now studying digitalization, so we have no exception of that, of course. Currently, we are a bit more deeper into in-store digital technologies and how these technologies affect the evaluation of the retailers. So kind of technology acceptance and SOR modeling, but we also study this kind of retail innovation part from the corporate side as well. So very often we try to do analyses, time series analyses regarding how different type of innovation affect the performance of large multinational retailers as well. So that's from my research background. This guest lecture is about business analytics or data analytics that are related to customer relationships. Yes, thank you for the title. So it's the exact title is Data Analytics in the Service of Stronger Customer Relationships. So it's I know that Luciana and her colleagues also teaching customer relationships and relationship marketing courses. So I try to connect these two areas, and I don't know actually I didn't know too much about the background of the audience. So I try to design actually this this lecture in a way that this is more applied version. So I will also talk a little bit about the method, but there will be less statistics and more application. So that was my aim. But if you have any questions regarding the methodology, then please feel free to ask me. Of course, I'm not expert of all technology. I used a couple of them because I think none of the people can say this, that everyone in every method we are experts, because there are so many methods and there's so many statistical approaches that so I wouldn't claim that reputation, but we had some experience in data analytics, and I'd just like to share this with you. Okay, if you go to the agenda, I like to talk about a bunch of things. First of all, about data, because everyone is stating that data is the new oil or the new raw material. But I think I just like to give you a quick glimpse about the data that is useful for marketing people, especially in relationship marketing, and where we actually where we extract all these informations. Then I also talk a little bit about the database variables that are typically used for forecasting customer behavior. And then since this whole lecture is built around customer relationships, I like to talk a very little about the customer lifetime curve and the ARA model. And then I try to break down the components of the ARA model, which is acquisition, retention, and add-on selling, and show you what is this phase is about and what kind of analytical methods can be used for that, and also try to come up with some examples. And then finally, we will actually summarize everything, and hopefully you actually get a bit more clearer pictures what data analytics in customer relationship management means. So when we go further, then this first slide is about the data. So very often when I teach this subject, I often say that when we speak about data lots of times, but data is a kind of raw material. So it means that data represents science suitable for manual, but I mean, nowadays more computer information processing. So it means these are numbers, texts, and also it can, I mean, so visual information, static and dynamic information, voice as well. So lots of, mostly nowadays, electronic signs that are in itself less usable for marketing purposes. They are stored in the data warehouse, but what we usually need that we have to assign meaning to the data. So it means that we need to know what the 1 or 2 or 3 means for that variable, or I mean, it depends on how the information is coded, so that we can extract different type of numeric or non-numeric information. And we also need to know, yes, actually the meaning. So that when we speak about information, and probably the third important concept here is the database, that is also very often mentioned. And databases means connected information. So data with meanings that can be stored and retrieved from usually from the data warehouse. And where this data come from comes to the next click, I think. That if Luciana clicks on another, yes, so where do data come from? Thank you very much. I try to structure this, so where we have this kind of information that we can use for studying lots of things, including customer relationships as well. We have internal systems, and these are very often represent in operational systems, enterprise resource planning softwares in retailing or any kind of sales, the point of sales terminals in banking. I mean, lots of customers are using automatic teller machines or demand deposit accounts. This is used by the bank, and these systems usually tell the bank and also the customer how much money we have on the account, for example, or what kind of products do we have. But of course, web servers, online retailers, of course, use a lot, and everyone who's selling to internet. Then telecommunication companies usually have telco switches. These are the softwares that track all the actions that we make. So when we browse, when we send a text message, when we I don't know, browse the internet, and all those kind of things, what we do, for example, through mobile phones, these are usually collected by these telco switches, and also calls and so on. So everything is actually recorded. Then billing systems are very important because companies can automate processes and extract info, for example, information like revenues generated by one customer through the billing systems, also shipment systems, and some companies have customer complaints platforms, and retailers. I mean, I just have to excuse myself just for giving lots of retail examples as well, because I do research in retailing. So loyalty programs are also the platforms where the loyalty programs are running, also a very good source of internal information about the transactions, the profile of the customers. So all these things are actually available, and everything that the company has is usually stored in the data warehouse. So this is a huge system. Mostly the IT department knows which software, what type of information is generated by which software, and they usually have a large map. This is called architecture, and they know actually, so where hopefully they know where the data can be found, what we're looking for. It's not always that it's easy. So yeah, so I mean, data warehouse is less used, actually is less useful for marketers. It's more the territory, the domain of the IT. They are usually the people who are extracting data for marketing and business purposes. And one of the typical use of this data warehouse is the so-called data mart. Data marts are databases that are replenished from the data warehouses, and they contain pre-specified dimensions. One of the most famous one is the so-called OLAP Cube, Online Analytic Processing Systems. Sales, marketing, business developments are used a lot, this kind of OLAP cubes, where there are different dimensions, very often sales, then also units, products, customers, lots of things are identified, and these data marts are generating ongoing reports for the business departments. And yeah, so basically, I mean, this is a very handy tool. It's a very fast tool. I wouldn't say it's always real time, but almost real time data, and it can be very easily generated. However, this is completely inflexible. So if I want to have something, a different classification or some additional information, that is not really possible, or just a very limited way. And then we have so-called external data sources. I mean, here comes everything that is generated outside of the company. So social media information, but also this classic surveys. So with questionnaire surveys, lots of companies are organizing promotional activities. And nowadays, customers has to go to a website, or they have to download an application, register themselves. So it means that they identify themselves, and then based on this kind of promotional actions like promotional games, or for example, when customers can win something, so companies are able to generate promotional databases that can be used for analytical purposes, but also lots of companies are buying data from media agencies or market research agencies and so on. And maybe I need one other click on for this slide, where we can see what the unit of analysis can be when we talk about data analytics or data mining, or I mean, we call this there are a couple of synonyms for that, but what is very typical for all kind of approaches, that the smallest unit of analysis is usually the transaction. So the customer is doing with the company. Of course, transactions might happen from the same product multiple times, but of course, products are also can be served as a unit of analysis, and then the customer. And in some industries, family and household could be a unit of analysis as well. So, for example, loyalty programs track household data as well. And when we want to track them, then we need identification for all this unit of analysis. So we need usually transaction IDs, product IDs, customer IDs, and if it is really relevant, then family or household IDs as well. And that way we can pool the information. So the transactions across products, and then we can pool actually aggregate the transactions to products, and we can assign it to customers, and then finally also to family and household. So that's maybe about the basics of data. And when we go to the next slide, then you can see that, of course, a database has lots of variables. Not speaking about the of the data warehouse, but let's say we just deal with a modest flat table database. We find various information in that database, ID variables, as I just mentioned you on the previous slide, and of course, lots of variables describing customer behavior. There might be some weight variables, cost variables, and there are lots of ignored variables in the table as well. I mean, it sounds a bit strange, but there are also columns usually in the table that represent the variables. The rows are usually representing the unit of analysis. I mean, one value variables, they cannot be even called variables. It's just taking for some reason one value. There are lots of sometimes empty columns because I mean, the company started to collect that information after a certain point of time, and also technical variables, bridging software languages and things like that. So what we, and of course, I mean, lots of companies are sitting or piling a large data. I just put this cartoon from Dilbert.com here. That is actually it's really just making a joke of that gigantic databases. I mean, of course, the one thing is that we have lots of data. The other thing, how can we use this data? And certainly not the way that this cartoon describing here, that yeah, we have a lot of data and we just try to throw it into certain type of softwares for certain type of analytical methods, and then when what comes out, then we apply, and that's it. But we can be actually a bit smarter than that. And when Luciana clicks on the slide again, then you can see that for data analysis, we usually, especially for marketing purposes, we are interested in variables that describe the customer behavior. And there are lots of things that we have in the databases, usually demographic variables, transaction variables, and marketing action variables. I mean, demographic is, I think, doesn't need too much explanation. So we need, I mean, usually the company has the most basic things like birth of year that can be converted to age, gender, very often the location where the customer lives, maybe number of household members. Some companies have a bit more specific information, but these are really the basic demographic variables. And I mean, Kumar Reinhardt, which is a really good book, also mentioned these psychographic lifestyle variables. I've been involved in a couple of projects. I couldn't really see that, but what is I think was I mean, the authors mentioned here that some companies are buying kind of lifestyle studies that can be inputted into the original database, so it can be assigned to certain customers, and then this can be a useful explaining input variables. But I mean, what every company has, that these are the transaction variables based on products or services. I mean, it depends, of course, on the profile of the company, but that they usually have a transaction history of the customer that is very often matched or can be linked to the demographic variables. And marketing action variable, so this group of variables mean that so companies using a lot of direct marketing behavior to target customers with specific offers, and when they use adaptive databases, it means that these reactions, the reactions of the customers are inbuilt into the database, so we can actually look up this kind of marketing action variables. Let's say that I'm a retail bank, and I send out a credit card offer to the customer. It was rejected 3 times. So very likely that we don't have to come up with that offer in the same year, because then the customer will be really pissed off, and then they will just conclude that. So that this company hasn't got any clue what their personal preferences are. But of course, in other situation, marketing action variables might be also this kind of promotional activities, so reaction to promotions, price discounts, participating, for example, in co-creation or kind of crowdsourcing projects as well. So it depends on the marketing activity that is relevant to the company. So these are usually all the input variables that we use for explaining the target variable. And in customer relationship management, these are usually very simple things, usually binary variables. So some kind of response variables that the customer responded to a cross-selling offer or an upselling offer or not, or whether the customer, what is the likelihood of the survival, or the likelihood, the probability of churn, for example. These are very typical target value variables that we like to estimate with all the input variables that we use here. I did not, I could speak about a lot, but of course, you could see that even the input variables can be plenty. So very often it is a wise decision not to enter and throw everything into a decision tree or a neural network analysis, but it's this very old-fashioned, simple analysis like correlation, cross-tabulation, analysis variance are very useful to filter out the relevant variables. So even if we now have, computer capabilities and lots of fancy methods, for example, personally, I found very useful to check first these basic relationships and keep only the variables that promise some predictive power regarding the target variable, and not just throwing everything in and then we'll see actually what comes out. So yeah, so based on this, if we click on the next slide, thank you. I like to show you now. We try to bring together now the customer relationships and the analytics, and I thought that this kind of customer lifetime curve would be a very suitable method, a suitable tool for that. I'm quite sure you know this, the good old lifetime curves. We use this for many purposes, for products and so on, but customer relationship management using actually modeling the say what's happening in the relationship between customers and the company during the full length of the relationship. And and for that reason, the horizontal axis represents a timeline. So it shows the length of the customer relationships in periods. It depends on the product. It can be, or the service can be weeks or months or years. So it depends really on, speak about telecommunication or for example, financial services. This is usually a lifelong experience. So from the cradle to the coffin, basically, because we need these services. So during the whole your whole lifetime, and also the companies developed a lots of product, a portfolio that can cover from a very young age till till the death of the customer. So, and some other industries, of course, just spend a few years or maybe just a few months. The horizontal axis, very often we depict the customer value. This might mean a lot of things. We very often speak about profit contributions, but now we just handle this as hypothetically that there's a value generation from the customer side, and this will change along the customer relationships. The first phase is the so-called prospect phase, and you can see that very often the customer value is in negative. That time, this is the time of investment when the company wants to acquire new potential customers, so they have to heavily spend on attracting them to try on a product or a service. And when this is happening, this is usually the first time purchase of a first time buy that is maybe repeated a couple of times. So we can see that by repeating the first or maybe just a few early purchases even mean a quite huge increase in the customer value. And then they entered after a certain number of repeat purchases in the core customers period. And then, of course, like every relationship will end. So sometimes, that comes the decline phase when the probability of churn, so that we lose the customer, is increasing. And when Luciana clicks on the slide, thank you, then you can see so each phase has a name. So the first one is the acquisition phase, and then the next one, when depending on the acquisition definition, so what is the criteria of acquisition, the retention phase is starting, and when after a certain time of retention, the company starts to open this add-on selling period. That means usually cross-selling and upselling activities to be able to increase the customer value of that specific customers. And this so the beginning letters so is used and so Bloodberg X Thomas, who actually wrote, I think, almost the very first book about customer relationship management. They call this customer equity. They labeled this kind of model like ARA model. So we use this now as an organizing or approach, and we structure now the last, so the remaining part of this presentation, and then we'll actually go one by one. So first we will focus on acquisition and retention, add-on selling. But before doing that, if we go to the next slide, then I just like to show you that now we like to connect now these phases to customer analytics or data analytics. And I like to show you that just a few examples. So what kind of analytical objectives can be linked to each of the phases? So for example, when we speak about acquisition, then lead generation and lead identification is a very important problem. And in customer relationship management, when we want to focus on at least on long-term profitability, then one typical example of analysis can be that how can we identify new customers with high growth potential? So that means growth potential very often means the kind of share of wallet approach. It means that this is the proportion of the category spending of a customer that goes to the company, and let's say this is 20%. And then if you want to increase this, of course, then, I mean, there's 80%, I mean, at least theoretically 80% growth. But yeah, it's very unlikely that we get to 100%. But even if we can actually increase this by another 20%, this is actually has a very positive effect on the profitability of the company. The other one is close to related to the customer retention. So, for example, we can also set an objective that we would like to reduce the churn with the help of predictive models that enable early identification of customers who are likely to stop doing business with the company. And this is very crucial one in churn management, in the churn analytics, that we like to know the churn as soon as possible to prevent it, because once the customer is churned, it's very hard to lure back the customer. It is very costly. So forecasting churn is also very important. And the third one is related more to the add-on selling phase of the lifetime curve. That so which product should be offered next to the customer? So what will be the next best offer, next best cross-selling offer, for example, for the customer? And this is also, I think, a very reflects a very elevated customer relationship management question, because it's not about, okay, we want to sell this product and who's likely to buy it, but we focus on the customer and we say, okay, with these preferences and with this profile, what will be the next product the customer would like to buy? And of course, the response rate gets much higher. Okay, so when we go to the next slide, I'd like to invite you with for a small game. Okay, because I think this represents very much the essence of data analytics. So I like to ask you to think of a number between 1 and 10. I mean, it's your choice, but it should be between 1 and 10. And if you have it, if you have this number, then we go to the next phase. That please multiply this number by 9. Okay, so it's very easy, because we don't have to compute with very large numbers. And once we have this, then please work out the checksum of the results. So this is the third step. So it means the sum of the numbers. So if you thought of, for example, 1, then it's very easy, because you have result as 9, and then, I mean, the checksum will be 9. But if you, I don't know, thought of another number, you just have to actually add the 2 decimals. So once you have this, then we go to the next step, and please multiply this result by 4. Okay, then divide it by 3, and then finally deduct 10 from the sum. I don't know, I hope you can use the chat, and I like to know what is the final result. I just please enter into the chat. Okay, so, and you can also write what was the starting number that you started out without, and then please also put the result. So maybe just start number and result number. And if you could put this into the or you can also tell me if you like.
So for most of us, it the result was 2. Is that right?
Yeah. And what have you started it with? What was you starting with? What was the number?
What start number you said?
Yeah, the starting number. I mean, most of you received 2, and this is correct. Yeah, and you, Rafael wrote that he's chosen 2.
8, 7.
Yeah, I started
7. Yeah.
4.
So yeah, that's interesting. How can it happen that you started with different numbers, but you all came to the same result?
You tell us.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm asking you. Yeah, someone started with 1. Yeah, just waiting for a few seconds. Okay, maybe someone is figuring it out. It's not difficult at all. It's just a small play.
I'm not good at math at all.
Okay, no problem. Okay, then I will actually then tell you the trick in this small game, that basically every number that is between 1 and 10 is multiplied by 9. The checksum will be 9 for all. If you choose 1, then of course multiplied by 9, it will be 9. If you choose 2, for example, and multiplied by 9, then you get actually 18, and 1 plus 8 is 9. And you could actually, I mean, if you had, for example, 5, then you have after the multiplication 45, so the checksum is 9. So basically this is a pattern that is a mathematical pattern that every number between 1 and 10 multiplied by 9, the checksum will always give 9. So basically after the third step, you calculated with to use the same number, and I just let you run a few rounds with multiplying the results by 4 and dividing it by 3 and deduct 10. But I said this is, I think, a really good example that I mean, of course, lots of things are happening in this exercise, but this is a pattern that has actually a very determining effect on the final results, because all of you actually received 2. So, and data analytics or data mining has the same goal. We're looking for patterns, not always, of course, mathematical patterns, but more for behavioral patterns to figure out actually, so how can we relate to the customers? So what are the offers that they like, or maybe we like to segment them, or we want to predict certain type of behavior. But these are all about behavioral patterns. Okay, so that's just was a little bit play, and then we go to the next slide then, and we start with acquisition. And then I of course I won't. I mean, now we just break down the ARA model. And I speak about each of the phase very briefly, and then I'll show you an example, okay, and the analytical method that is not really statistical, just an example, so what the method is doing, and we can see this kind of pattern or predictive nature of this method. So first of all, I mean, when we speak about customer acquisition, then the classic definition for acquisition, that who is an acquired customer, usually is that the customer who makes the first purchase or purchasing in the first predefined period. But I mean, if you Luciana clicks another, yeah, okay. This is also not always that simple, because lots of acquisition processes have multiple steps. So for example, if you see this credit card company who targeted 100,000 prospects, 10,000 responded to the mail, but at the end, the company, after the approval period, the company could only issue 2,000 credit cards after the approval. So it means that after the whole acquisition process, they have only 2,000 new customers for credit cards. And even if 10,000 responded to the mail, because the acquisition process has 2 phases. First, the targeting period with I know, different kind of marketing or advertising tools, and then I mean, there's an approval period. So I mean, if we just would say that, okay, we have a 10% acquisition rate because 10,000 customers responded to the mail, this would be a, I mean, I wouldn't say this is a false acquisition rate, but maybe just a preliminary acquisition rate, and we get the full picture after we actually include also those customers who actually really could receive the credit card. So I mean, probably a more realistic acquisition rate in this case, when we divide the 2,000 by the 100,000, we say that, okay, 2% was the acquisition rate. And I like to highlight this because what I've seen, that there are kind of interest clash between sometimes it's the business part and the sales part and the kind of marketing and media agencies. Of course, media agencies like to emphasize the first phase, that how many people responded to the mail, because this is what they can do. But this is not the full responsibility how many approval will happen after that. Yeah, I mean, the full picture can be created by including both phases in these cases. And when Luciana, can I ask you to, yes, so how can we define acquisition for credit card company? Maybe another click, because based on this approach, we can distinguish between 2 things, 2 types of acquisition, the so-called transaction perspective. So when, I mean, the acquisition ends with the first purchase, these are usually helpful when we have a one-phase acquisition. And we are much better off with acquisition process perspective when the acquisition includes not only the first purchase, but also maybe encounter certain activities that precede and follow the purchases. In these cases, we develop different acquisition rates that might happen in individual level and also at a campaign level. So when we have, for example, a database or prospect database, these are usually mail lists that the company is buying from other companies, agencies, or even companies who has the main profile like Dun & Bradstreet, for example, who are selling company databases and things like that. Then we have the chance to calculate the probability of the individual acquiring an individual customer. And if you don't have the database, then we can actually do only campaign level. So it means it will be the ratio of acquired and targeted customers. And this is very typical when, I mean, in lack of databases, we go for traditional marketing or advertising methods like, I don't know, TV or internet ads, radio, sports, outdoor advertising, and so on, because we cannot connect the responses and the targeted customers. Okay, so when we go to the next slide, when you can see that when we speak about acquisition, we can have to do different direction. When we, I mean, it's not a different direction, but so two main analytical domains. So the first one is about segmentation, when we split the market into homogeneous customer groups that are characterized by similar preferences. So these are usually detected by so-called unsupervised methods. These are usually the cluster methods. I'm sure some of you probably familiar with this. So we unsupervised methods are used when the data algorithm will create the groups of customers without pre-specifying the categories, and this classification, this unsupervised classification, will happen on the basis of similarities of the data. So whenever you run a cluster method, you know you have to calculate either the distance or the proximity between the objects or the customers based on the clustering variables, and then we try to group those customers together who have the smallest distance or the highest similarity, and thereby we create segments. And after we have this, then we can go to the next large method domain. This is related to targeting. So it means that the customers are usually targeted by a so-called lead offer in the acquisition phase. These are representing entry product or pricing, or using indirect or direct communication channels. It depends on if we have the prospect database or not. And when we speak about targeting in customer relationship management, we differentiate between 3 degrees of targeting. The first degree is the most sophisticated one. This is about profiling and regression scoring. So it means that we try to estimate this individual acquisition probabilities. Then there is the so-called second degree targeting, and we can use decision tree methods and, for example, nearest neighbors methods, supervised cluster method. And I mean, the third degree targeting is not a real targeting. It means it's a kind of self-selection that is nowadays happening mostly by content marketing. So it's, I mean, it's a different area. I won't discuss this. So when we go to the next slide, I brought you an example for regression scoring. I don't want to go into details. What you need to know that this example is about an office supply wholesale company who wants to acquire new customers, and they are lucky because they could buy a prospect database that has some information about, of course, the contact information of the companies and the firm size, which is expressed in revenues, number of employees, basically another firm size measure, and then whether the company operates in the service sector or not. And the regression analysis, I mean, you see this, there's a test campaign and they estimate the regression function that is indicated by red. So we want to know actually what is the importance of the revenue, the number of employees, and whether the company is a service sector or not. So on the left side, I mean, just a few examples, we have 5 prospects. We can see the firm size, the number of employees, and service sector, whether they are the service sector or not. And on the right side, you can see the estimation here at the, I think in the 3rd row, you can see the regression coefficients. And we take actually every input value and multiply it by the firm size and the number of employees, or whether the company is in a service sector or not. And then we create this kind of regression scores. So once we estimated the original regression functions, and then we go to the next slide, then you can see that we can use these scores to for targeting the potential customers. So it means, I mean, in this case, we use the decile analysis. It means that we rank order the companies in a descending order based on the score rate. So it means the decile number 10 represents those companies who have the highest score range. And since we use decile as percentage in this case, so we have 10 groups that include equal number of customers. Each of the deciles actually includes 493 number of prospects, and you can see that the corresponding response rate shows a high correlation with the regression scores. And based on this kind of analysis, of course, I mean, if we think in an efficient way, or so it's kind of on the basis of the idea of decreasing also diminishing return, then you can see that, of course, I mean, if I'm a marketer, definitely I would start with decile number 10, 9, or maybe 8, because the response rates are the highest in these cases. So I'm more willing to spend first on these customers who show higher response rates than compared to the decile 1 or 2, where we have very small response rates, and it also means that will result in a very inefficient marketing campaign. So in the first cases, we can actually increase the return on marketing expenses by not spending on those who are less likely to respond and less likely to be acquired by the company. And of course, on the other hand, this is when we flip the coin, we can also say that we will actually increase the effectiveness of the marketing campaign by focusing on those who respond the most likely. So we can increase the effectiveness, but at the same time, we can decrease also the marketing costs, not spending for those customers groups who are less likely to be gained as a new customer. Right. Let's page to the next slide, and this is another example for customer acquisition. This is taken from a business analytics book. This is a really good book. So if you are interested in methods like this, I think it was published by McGraw-Hill last year, so it's quite recent. And they had this case study about a fitness center and the fitness center usually recruits new members through advertisements, and then those who respond to the ads, they can participate in an open house event. So it means they can try the fitness services or the fitness centers for 1 day for free. And they, based on this open day events, they build up a database, and the manager of the fitness center wants to know who should be targeted with a follow-up phone call, who will be most likely a potential member and will subscribe for a whole year using the fitness center. And they have a couple of data. So they have, as you can see, the table, age, income, and how many hours they spend on a weekly basis with exercise. And they also have historical data about the enrollment. So, I mean, they have altogether a 1,000 past open house attendee database, and they like to know actually that who should be targeted. So Janet, the fitness center manager, Janet Williams, wants to develop a kind of data-driven classification model for predicting whether or not a potential gym member will purchase the annual membership. And for that reason, they also have 23 new open house attendees, and the 1,000 customer data or open house attendee data come. I mean, this is it's happened already. So when we page to the next slide, then you can see just a very short extract of the analysis. So they use this K nearest neighbor method from the past to see whether they can actually predict the target variable. So the target variable is that whether they buy the annual membership or not, based on age, income, and weekly exercise hours. And the KN analysis, shows a couple of things. Very often, most of the data, this is not only typical for KNN, but for other data mining approaches, that they produce this kind of confusion matrix. The confusion matrix means that it compares the actual and the predicted values of the target variable, and it shows that how well the model is performing. Everything that is in the diagonal, this is a correct classification. So it means that, if it was predicted, the attendee was predicted as a non-purchaser. In actual, this is a non-purchaser too. And if it was predicted as a purchaser, it was actually a purchaser too. And everything that is off diagonal, this is the incorrect classification that are also classified in accuracy. So a couple of measures like specificity, precision, and so on are developed. But we can see that overall error is 10.5%. So it's quite a good model. And we also, they assess the model based on accuracy, sensitivity, specificity rates that exceed 90% in the training sample. Training sample means this is the sample that we use for estimation. And we don't have the data there because you can use, you can profile this. So groups based on age, income, and weekly exercise hours. And they also, they did this analysis and they figured out that those are the most promising new members who are 50 years or older. They have relatively high annual income and spend at least 9 hours with weekly exercise. So they are more likely to enroll after the open house event. So when they have this database, they can actually target them. But before doing that, they had this 23 people new database that can be used as a control or test sample. And we can actually figure out that or compare that whether the model is working in the same way. It means that we get a very similar confusion matrix. We have very actually so the similar accuracy, specificity, sensitivity, and so on for the model. And when this is actually working and we see the similar results, then we can extend it to a larger database and then use this kind of criteria that we identified by the KNN method as for targeting. So it means that we look for all these people and we'll actually target them first, and they get the first follow-up calls, and then later on probably can be scaled down. But yes, again, this is also another way to find the potential customers in an efficient way. Okay, so when we have this, I think we go to retention. very quickly because I feel the time is passing by. And customer retention and churn. I put there, what is retention? I always usually mention this, but that depends on the criterion of acquisition. So when we define, let's say, after that a customer is acquired after the first purchase, it means after the second purchase, it's a retained customer. But if we define acquisition that, for example, the customer has to make at least 3 transactions within 2 months, for example, then the retention will follow after 2 months and 3 transactions too. So yeah, and of course, I mean, this has also, I mean, how rigorous we are in the definition of acquisition. This has a very huge effect on retention. So if we are a bit more loose and more casual in acquisition, very likely we can show up the relatively high acquisition rates, but we will suffer from low retention and high churn. And of course, the opposite is also true, that if we are more rigorous in acquisition, so it means that we target only the most promising customers, and we do the targeting the right way, then the retention rates will be high after that, and also the churn rates low. So another important aspect that we need to consider when we think about retention, that what is the purchase cycle of the product or service that we sell to the customers. There are lots of industries that are high purchasing frequency, so we can observe purchases in that case in a relatively small time window. I mean, in this case, I would recommend, and also literature recommends, observing purchases, series of purchases, and maybe the so-called average inter-purchase time, so the time passed by 2 purchases. And the long purchase, so products with long purchase cycles, usually longer than 1 year, then the company needs to introduce kind of marketing interventions that indicate the intention to purchase. What is, I mean, this sounds a bit abstract, but for example, if you are I don't know, Harley Davidson seller, very unlikely that your customers will come every year to buy a new motorbike because they are very costly. But I mean, you can organize events, or you can actually send out reminding emails that they have to take the motorbike for, I don't know, just supervision or servicing or whatever. And based on these responses, or maybe participating in the events, can indicate that the customer is still with us. So in this case, we can't really, you know, so stick to the number of purchases because this is not realistic. And still, the customer can be very committed to the company. And you can see that I try to actually show this a visual way, that retention and churn rates are complementary measures. So when the retention rate is 50%, then the churn rate is 50%. So they always add up to 100% or to 1 if you express it in decimals. So when we speak about customer retention rates or churn rates, we can also estimate on a customer level and the firm level. At the customer level, we speak about probabilities that the customer purchasing in the current period as well, compared to the previous period. And the churn rate shows that what is the probability of that the customer leaves the firm in a given time period. And if we speak about firm levels, then we speak about usually averages or ratios. In case of retention rate, the ratio of customers purchasing in the current and the previous period. In case of the churn patterns, that percentage of the firm's customer base that will disappear, or that the customers will actually leave. So when we go to the next slide, I have a short example. And I think this slide was missing from the slide I'm missing. I will resend it, or I mean, Luciana already has it, so you can convert it to a PDF and share it with the others. This is actually, I mean, in retention and churn, probably when modeling is more important, the churn modeling. And I brought you again a banking. So I promise that I will speak about lots of retailing, but actually it's not true. I have a lots of banking examples currently, but yeah, so this example is about churn of the credit card users with Model Max. This is a special software that is developed for financial services, and it's also very good for forecasting churn patterns. So you can see that there are a couple of input variables like credit card balance, interest change in the last month, purchase level in month 6, household age, payment year to date, month to cash advances, and so on. And the target variable is the probability of whether the customer will churn or not. And the applied statistical method that you can't see here, the stepwise regression, I already showed you one example. For that, it was not stepwise, just a simple linear regression. And it was used for selecting the predictors. So these 7 variables that you can see there, so the input variables, and a neural network was used to predict the churn. The neural networks are hard to visualize because they use nonlinear transformations. So what we see usually the output is a confusion matrix and the relative importance of the input variables. But what is very typical, and I thought this would be useful for you, that we create some kind of lift charts for churn models, in this case for this neural network model. And the lift chart shows how much better the current model performs compared to no model used, or maybe to alternative models as well. When we use no model, then we compare usually to the random chance of being churn or being selected. So if I don't know, I mean, I have 1,000 customers and 10 that churned out of 10,000, then 10% would be this average or random or no model based estimation. So, and then we need to know actually that whether the model is able to perform better or not. And what you can see here is that this is actually a lift chart that is based on a decile analysis. Again, decile analysis is used a lot as well. So we rank order our customers based on customer churn into 10 equal groups in a decreasing order. And we can see that in the first group there, I mean, the lift is quite high because it's 7.1. So it's 7.1 times higher than, let's say, the average churn rate in the overall database or in the customer groups that we like to examine. And I already see a typo because I mean the lift percentage churn rate for each decile overall divided by the overall churn rate, not the response rate, but I will correct that. Okay, so let's go further. And I think I prepared a list of different analytical methods, but I think I would skip that. So you can go through it. I already mentioned the decile analysis, some of the, not the logistic, but some other regression analysis, the neural networks, a short definition is there. So what are they good for? But probably we go further because I can see the time is passing very quickly. But if you happen to have any questions regarding that, you can do this after after we went through the slides. Okay, so can I ask you to, Luciana, to go to the next slide? Okay, and this is the third phase. It's the add-on selling. So it includes every kind of marketing and sales activities that are used to boost or increase the customer value in the retention phase. So ways how we can add to the product portfolio and the value generated by the customer. And these are typically cross-selling. It means selling additional product, upselling, trading up to more profitable products, or I mean, probably if some of you don't know what is upselling, is or probably what could be probably a good example is, for example, mobile internet capacity. So if you have, let's say, I don't know, a 5 GB mobile internet capacity, then an upsell offer is that the telecommunication company tells you, okay, for a small increase in your monthly fees, you can double this capacities, like from 5 to 10 GB, for example. So basically, they are selling you the same product, but a higher capacity. But you can, I think you can guess that of course, the variable cost of doubling this mobile internet capacity costs very little for the company once they have the infrastructure. And in some cases, there are also reselling. So we resell the same product again. Telecommunication is a good example again for that. Usually when we sign up for certain mobile services, we do this for 1 year or 2 years, at least in Europe, in Hungary. And when the 2 years starts to come closer, usually these companies generate a list, and then the call centers start to call these people to try to resell the mobile service again. And very often, sometimes they try to resell it, or they try to actually connect it or combine it with upselling activities that try to migrate customers to a higher value and higher fee mobile service packages. It depends on if they do not succeed. Very often they just resell the product. There are lots of benefits of cross-selling. I mean, profit increase apparently, but also sales increase, contribution margin, so it's the gross margin increase, and which of course has a direct effect on profit, but also it has a very beneficial effect on the relationships, because the more product the customer owns, the better the customer can be serviced. So they have a more comprehensive experience with the service of the company. This increases the service quality. Then the customer becomes more satisfied, and they are more satisfied. Then the switching cost is higher, so they tend to churn less as well. Yeah, and we receive those messages, but I will go to that after that. So when we go to the next slide, then I like to show you typical analytical questions regarding cross-selling. So I narrowed down the add-on selling, and this is focused on cross-selling. And when we deal with cross-selling analysis, usually we might have 3 different questions. The first one is product focused. So what is the probability of a customer reaction to the planned cross-selling offer? So we have a certain product, and we want to see that who is likely to buy it. I mean, here cross-purchase and these decision tree methods, logistic regression, neural network, all can be do a good service. A more sophisticated approach to cross-selling, the so-called preference-based approach, which means that what product will be the most likely purchased by the customer. So this is a customer-focused approach, and this is also called next best offer or next best product. And this has a very close relation to recommendation systems. And here, I mean, content and collaborative filtering are coming into the picture. And the third one is a time-focused research or analytical objective. This is what is the time that the customer expected to buy the next product. So it can be basically combined, that we figure out what is the next best product, but what is the best time or date to come up and contact the customer to make this offer, and the kind of survival analysis, time series analysis, things like that could be useful for that. So now we also, because this is a really broad topic, I narrowed down only to the customer-focused approach and recommendation systems, because they have a lot to do with personalization, and this is also very important in customer relationship management. And lots of companies, I mean, Netflix, Amazon, I mean, I don't have to introduce them. Stitch Fix is a US recommendation system-based fashion retailer. So they build this kind of personalized next best offers around recommendation systems. They are run by so-called recommendation engines that help filter the items in a personalized base from a huge number of products. So, and this means also that they have if they succeed and the algorithm is working well, then this has a very positive effect on the conversion rate. of the company. So it means that so they can sell very effectively based on this system. So when you look at the recommendation system in Dreams, we usually have two different examples, two different methods, the so-called the content filtering and the collaborative filtering that can be customer-based and item-based. And on the next slide comes a bit more more explanation. So when Luciana clicks on the next slide, then we can see it. I also find really cute figures, and this is actually taken from a book I mean, if you are involved in kind of fashion retail, there was a book actually published in 2018. It's called Artificial Intelligence for Fashion by Springer, and they really give a lots of examples for data mining and collaborative filtering systems. And the examples are taken from that book. So when you look at the user-based collaborative system, you can see that we have customer A and customer B, and then and the collaborative filtering will come up with recommendations based on the similarity to the other users. So let's say, I mean, we make recommendations for customer A based on the similarities of the customer B. So I mean, the recommendations are developed based on what other users purchased. The other approach is so-called item-based approach, recommends product based on ratings of similar items. So it means that this item-based collaborative filtering can give useful, relevant recommendation, even if we don't know anything about the user. So the starting point is here, the item profile, and then we try to match this to other items that was previously purchased by another customer. So it can be very powerful. And for example, in fashion, this is really important because, I mean, fashion articles have lots of features, and all these things can be basically rated, and it enables a more sophisticated recommendation compared to the user-based. Yeah, and yes, and content-based filtering, yes, this is the next one. This is actually the most simple one, so probably I should have put this first. This is based on user actions and preferences. So you can see that so there's a customer profile that is matched to an item profile, and we try to come up with a recommendation with the combination of the item and the customer profile. The problem is that, for example, if the system estimates that the customer is preferring red items, then every time, so the recommendation will actually include or come up with something in red. And of course, customer preferences might change in time. So this is not the most sophisticated part. And finally, we came to the conclusion that is, I mean, I tried to sum up this, that I tried to actually, what kind of message I tried to transfer to you, that so this kind of, the data analytical tools can be really, can be matched very effectively to the customer lifetime curve, including acquisition, retention, and downselling. But in each phase, I mean, of course, there might be overlaps between the tools, but there are specific tools that are more suitable for acquisition, retention, and downselling phase. In acquisition, the main goal of analysis is that we segment and target the customers effectively and also in an efficient way. In the retention phase, we usually estimate probabilities, so we have to use methods that are able to do that. And I mean, the final result outcome of this kind of analysis usually kind of list of customers that we like to address with certain offer, that we actually want to know whether they are retained or not. Sorry, this is a say, and what can we do to retain them if there is the probability is high so the churn probability is high, so it means that very likely that we lose them. So what can we do actually? I mean, this can be also, I did not put here, but satisfaction surveys can be used as a complementary method here, going back to those customers who are likely to churn and elaborating what they don't like or why they don't think that the offer of the company is relevant. And in the final phase, add-on selling, cross-selling, upselling offers are supported by very often by recommendation systems on collaborative filtering, but also, I mean, and this kind of also other analytical tools could be used, but collaborative filtering can increase or contribute to customer satisfaction and loyalty to personalized offers, and I think they have a kind of distinguished place in this phase. And firms can benefit from effective cross and upselling marketing campaigns that increase the return on marketing expenses as well. So we can not only be effective in marketing, but with the use of these analytical tools, we can be also very efficient and increase the return on the marketing spending. And I think that's it. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, I can't speak a lot about these topics, even I try to make it short. But please, if you have questions, feel free to
sure.
pose the questions. Yeah.
So it was super great. I learned a lot from your speech today. I hope the others too. So please, the audience, if you have any questions, feel free to do it. So we'll start with one. Can I?
Yeah, of course, please.
So it was very interesting when you showed us the many tools that we can use to acquire new customers. And you also show us that how it is important to provide or through the data mining to provide a customer partner, right?
Yeah.
As you said, behavioral partner in consumer behavior.
Yeah.
Based in your knowledge and all the applications you have done, do you think that is there some behavior partners that that are already largely used by companies? I mean, so if you put, I don't know, some types that already we can already know about consumer behavior in terms of issue.
So you mean new variables, new input variables, or the patterns?
Yeah, the patterns. Yeah.
Oh, that's a hard question because I think it's really industry specific. What I can see, for example, because I do more research in retailing nowadays, and what I can see, for example, that a new stream is, I mean, new, it's in the last 5 years, let's say, so it's not 1 month old, but it's just in the last 5 years. So retailers really started to turn to social media as well. So and also other companies, because I mean, especially the systems and the databases that a company used to have, they focus mainly on transaction, demographic, and these campaign variables. And then nowadays, I think they heavily use social media data. This is also very often part of the CRM system. They also they struggle with it as well. So I can't tell you any patterns, but I think this is a new trend, and there's a lot of challenge for companies that social media includes lots of unstructured data, and I think that's a new challenge for companies. Even if are really good text mining and lots of algorithms, this data is still very messy for them. Or even if they can do this or hire people, they have problems with that. How can they turn it into useful business insights? So it's not a specific pattern, but definitely I think it's a direction that, and the new types of variables in the customer database, that they like to deal with it because they see that there are lots of content and lots of useful things, but the cost and also the expertise is currently a challenge. Yeah. So whether, because I mean, numeric information is easy to deal with, much easier than this kind of voice files, for example, for call centers or social media stuff, lots of videos and so on. Everything can be coded and analyzed, and we have, I mean, we have now high capacity softwares for that. But yeah, so that's a problem. So I guess, and this will be a new trend. How can analyze this in an efficient way? Yeah, that's it there. But I don't know whether this was an answer to your question, but
yes, in fact, what you're saying is that in the past, just age or income or localization could be enough to have a partner, right? So what you're saying that now you have a mix of other external variables linked to the of this consumer in the I don't know, the social media. So linking this question, I wanted to hear you say something about this particular way that retail are using influential people, right? Like celebrities or non-celebrities or small powerful influential people, using them to attract new customers. So recently, one of our big retail said that they will give their salesperson in the store, then engage them to be influential. So what do you think about this? How company can effectively measure the effectiveness of the use of this influential?
So you mean influencer marketing, right? So this so yeah, I mean, this is less a database type of database type of issue. I think this is actually a really tricky one, again, because I think that there are two things that should be considered here. The one thing is the so it's like a, I mean, the tool of, I mean, they behave as a kind of, or no, not they behave, so the companies use them as a tool of advertisement. So like, I don't know, it's a, yeah, it's like a TV spot, just, I mean, this is a personal recommendation of a product. So one thing, I think the part of the effect is that they are paid, this is a paid communication tool. And I'm aware that I'm speaking about person, sorry for that. So, and the other part of the effect is this kind of word of mouth that they are generating. And this is not really, I mean, of course, I mean, they have a relationship with the customer. And in this case, I think the company has an indirect relationship through the influencer, right? So they can, I think they can measure both effects. So what is the effectiveness of the influencer marketing as an advertising tool? And the other direction is, or other part of this influencer marketing is the word of mouth. I mean, this net promoter score and things like that can be useful, but I think this is a bit less related to, you know, this data-based or data mining type of, or I don't know, I haven't, or maybe just I haven't seen an example for that, because so this kind of customer relationship management or database type of analysis usually implies that we have a direct contact to the customer. And in influencer marketing, this is less true. However, the influence can build, can build or can use this kind of methods. But what, in my experience, they usually use rather content marketing.
Okay, yeah.
So, and then you have to apply that type of analytical methods. But text mining could work here, or any kind of test analytics, if you want to explore the generated word of mouth and things like that, I think. But what I was speaking about was more about this, the methods that are based on customer identification and databases. So I don't know actually how we can solve this with influencers, at least in Europe. I don't know what is in Brazil, but we have this GDPR, you know, regulation, and then it's very hard to build up a database like that, because you need the permission of the customers through the influencer. So this is a bit shaky, I think. However, the influencer could use it, I think. But I haven't seen too much examples. I don't know whether you do research in that. Yeah, so that's but it could be a new domain actually, because lots of companies are using it. And now when live streaming is coming as a new form of influencer marketing, I guess in Brazil there are also a couple of retailers who are using it, Amazon, and lots of companies are basically represents a new form of influencer marketing. This is actually connected to selling, and that could be interesting. I mean, this is more closer to that approach that I was talking about, I think.
So it's wonderful. I wish we will ask if the audience wanted to make any questions or comments. Comments for Professor Irma.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Professor Irma. Thank you for our presentation. It was very informative.
Rogerio.
Yes, I like it very much. One question, Prof Irma. What would be nowadays good areas for study in the recommendation systems? If I would like to study in this area, what would be hot spots or questions that will be good to respond nowadays?
Yeah, I think the new things what I've seen, these are this kind of combination of the content and collaborative filtering. I mean, now the more the companies who are really at the edge of this, of these technologies like Stitch Fix and Amazon, they are going to that direction. And of course, collaborative filtering using also different statistical methods as well. So, I mean, this is a huge area. So I don't know whether you have any expertise or you just want to jump into this area right now. But yeah, I mean, hybrid collaborative filtering systems are, I think, now quite important. And I also have to tell you that, I mean, these people are usually, I mean, of course, if you want to understand the business side, there are lots of good literature there. But I also put a few books here, and I recommended this Luce. I think it's a lady who wrote this book, Artificial Intelligence for Fashion. So it was actually published in 2018. So there are a couple of good books in that, but this is a huge area. And I don't know whether you have any courses like data science at the university that has to do also something with coding as well. Because I think they also teach these things. But I mean, just give a short answer because I can talk a lot. So that hybrid collaborative systems are I think the more cutting edge approaches currently. And how can we combine content and this kind of collaborative filtering? And there are several opportunities to do that because we have many information now at the internet, so given in forms of ratings, evaluation of items, products, and so on, plus the customer profile. So yeah, lots of opportunities. So yes, that's my answer. And good luck with that. You will be a very, I think, demanded workforce when you go into that area, because many companies are lacking actually. I mean, there are lots of IT experts and mathematicians and meteorologists and people who are coming from natural sciences. But I think what companies are lacking is workforce who can translate all these things into business insights, and then can bridge these two areas. I don't know what is your background, but yeah, so that's what I can recommend you in terms of recommendation system. So,
sure,
yeah.
it's a challenge nowadays to use all the data available.
Yeah, you are from business. You're studying from business area or from?
I am
or from IT?
the two. I am a data
Both.
scientist, but I work
Okay.
in a business area.
Okay, then
In
you
a
actually very
team,
close to
small
that area.
team to build segmentation and models to marketing.
Okay, that was all familiar for you, right? So lots of methods that I tried to show you. I mean, very briefly, probably you are not going much more details with the project as well. Yeah, and you are dealing with collaborative filtering too, or
We are starting with a project to build a recommendation model to upselling, especially for loyalty programs. I work with the loyalty programs in telecommunications, and you need to show the best offer for different users.
Yeah,
and we have a lot of data to work, but it's a challenge task, very challenging.
Yeah.
For sure, I got the Professor Irma give you a lot of insights, right?
Yeah.
You know what to make a question, please?
Yes, thank you, Professor. First of all, I'd like to thank you about your words. I'm a little bit nervous because of my English, but I'm trying to ask something that I'd like to know. Professor, I'd like to know something about microsegmentation. If you can tell us about which personalization approach refers about microsegmentation. Is that clear, my question?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you need to do the microsegmentation, and then you can develop personalized offers. So that, I think, segmentation is coming first, and then personalization comes after that. Yeah, I mean, microsegmentation might mean a lot, actually. I mean, I tend to think about these things that there is a different granulation, so of segmentation. So we can, I mean, you have the overall customer base, and you can go down to individual customers, so one-to-one customers. So, and of course, well, I've seen that, yeah, microsegmentation might have different approaches, but if you really go for small or individual customer preferences, then yeah, I mean, we certainly will personalize. I mean, this comes together. I'm not sure that you are so you are interested more in the methodology or in the personalized offer, because that was not clear.
More in the personalized, about the how can yes, the second one.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it depends on lots of things, industry and the specific product or whatever. But I mean, if you want to go for really micro segments, then you need to use this kind of response modeling where you have I mean, basically you can actually use to estimate for small groups, but first I would recommend to estimate it on an individual level. So I mean, you can use different types of regression, neural network, logistic regression, estimating the probability of purchasing something, or if you can go for segmentation, then you can actually, I mean, just smaller groups, not individual customers, then you can actually use segmentation methods with transaction variables, preferences, channel use, and things like that, and to get this very small clusters. So this is one way, or I mean, yeah, it means you can do this at an individual level as well. I think what is really important that once you have all these transaction variables, channel preferences, maybe the earlier responses to different kind of marketing events, then you can actually estimate or match this with let's say cross-selling activities or upselling activities, so you can come up with complementary offers. And for that reason, and if you want to do the personalization part, then and when you have the micro segment, then you can go also for some kind of collaborative filtering method and things like that. because this will be very close to individual offers or even individual within the micro segment as well. Or you can aggregate this and you target maybe the the people in this small segment as well. Because I mean, if you consider collaborative filtering, this is based on similarities, either similarities of between customers or between items. So I mean, this kind of methods help you to come up with some personalized offer as well, at the segment level or even on an individual basis.
Thank you so much.
This was an answer to you. So,
No, thank you so much.
so, but yeah.
Dear Irma, I would like so much to thank you for your wonderful presentation and the insightful speech. I would like to add Professor Irma Agárdi if he wants to add something.
I just like to thank you for having me. It was a great adventure. So especially the first with the Zoom, and thank you for all of you for the patience until we solved this sharing. But I really enjoyed, and as you can see, I can talk a lot about this topic. But actually, it was great to meet you also this way, and thank you very much for the questions. Yeah.
Give that course for us for a week course. Think about it.
Yeah, think about it. I'm quite busy currently. I don't make any promises yet, but we'll see. I really hope actually that we have a kind of collaboration. So it's not from my part, but we find also other opportunities that you can come and speak about your topics at Corvinus University. That would be great. And I think that would be a good next step. So, and then we can keep on talking about the opportunities.
Zagalo?
It's okay. It's only to repeat the thank you very much for your presentation, and I like especially the playing with numbers moment.
Yeah,
it's very good because it's we are working in another ways to share the science, another ways to share the knowledge. So I think it's a very good way, because with playing with the numbers, you send to us the logic of data mining.
Yeah.
So it's very good. I like very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for this feedback. I tested this a couple of times with my students as well, I have to tell you, and they also like it, because anyway, when they hear this is data mining, and we do also, of course, a bit more number crunching as well with methods. This is a kind of warm-up exercise, and they feel a bit more accessible. So this topic, but yeah, thank you that like it. I just wanted to, and this is why actually so the previous slide did not contain, because I didn't want that you figure it out in advance. So I wanted to make it live, so at real time. But I mean, now Luciana has all the slides, so please share with the others. Okay, so if you like to try it, I also borrowed it from a training, so you feel free to borrow it for your course. So if you can use it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Irma, thank you again. It was a great pleasure, and I really would like to have you here in Brazil, of course.
Yeah.
Because I think most of us was curious to know more about the backstage of all this calculus and all, because they're very insightful. And I think that even in Brazil, we have lots of firms that are doing this manually. And as Rogério said, and other ones, big ones, have tons of data, and it doesn't have the skills to really have insights from customer behavior. So it would be wonderful if you could come.
Thank you very much. Let's think about this for a while. Yeah.
We are already linked, and for the students to reach you, I would ask you if you can share your presentation with your contact for the students.
Yeah, of course. Yes, it's my email on the presentation, so you can share presentation with all the emails, so it's no problem at all.
That's perfect. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful week up there in Hungria.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks again for inviting me. It was a great pleasure. And I really hope that we can continue. And I also figure out opportunities that you can actually come and maybe give also some, maybe at first online and later on, maybe in person, some lectures at Corvinus University. You will be very, very welcome.
Very good. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Irma. Thank you. Congratulations.
So thank you very much. Have a nice week as well. And I wish you all the best. So this is goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Recording.